And let's turn off the air conditioner. That is too loud. Turn on some more lights. It's been a while since I live streamed. I am going to live stream in just a moment. It's been a little while, so I'm still setting up. Let's see. Hello, Nathan. Looks like the stream is working. It's been a while, so I had to find all the cameras and equipment to update some drivers. I had to find my pad of paper. Sorry about all that. Let's see. I'm going to zoom in a little more on this. Geek Workshop, nice to see you again. I haven't done this in a while, so I don't necessarily anticipate getting a lot of viewers, but I was going to draw today, and I was like, it's time to stream some more, right? Let's see, is this... Oh, that's too bright there. Okay. Let me just adjust a couple settings, but I'm almost ready to go. And yeah. I'm being told that the stream quality is good. The sound levels look like they're in their normal ranges, so I think I've done everything I can to get this set up. Now, basically, I learned that today is one of my friend's birthdays. He doesn't talk about that. I mean, I don't talk about my birthday much at this age either. But we're probably going to go see the original RoboCop tonight, and since it's his birthday, I wanted to bring something. So he loves monster movies. Hello, Chrissy. And because he loves monster movies, I thought, you know what? Why don't I draw him confronting or facing down Godzilla? Because he has told me multiple times that if giant monsters ever existed, it's absolutely the way that he would want to go. He's given it a lot of thought. So I figure, you know what? Let's see if I can sort of draw John. He's got like a little inset here. This is going to be him. If I can sort of draw him like embracing his death at the hands of Godzilla. Something like that. So let's see. It is 9 o'clock already my time? Is that right? Oh my god, it is. All right. Well, that means that I've got about 2 hours to draw. So hopefully that's plenty of time. I was actually starting this project. I was drawing for a while and didn't have things set up right. And I actually tried to plug in an incorrect plug. I don't know what it is. I think it's like... I don't know what it is. But I started to plug it into the USB port, and it starts saying power surge. I was like, power surge? No, I'm just drawing. I thought that it had fallen out, so I put it in. It turns the computer off. I was like, oh, I didn't set it up right. So I look carefully at the plug, I follow it, and it's already plugged into the computer. So I created a loop. Sorry, Chrissy, I screwed around with our computer a little. It seems to be fine. Dumb me. Classic. So this is my friend John, or at least it's the best likeness I am putting together in the time I have available. And it's trying to make him look kind of happy or content with what's about to happen here. And I can probably touch it up some more once I get to the inking stage. So I think it's been several months since I've done one of these. I guess I could have looked up when the last time I did one was, but it may have even been right before I went to Japan, ironically. Hold on, I'm getting a pop-up window I need to close. Hello, Sigamigs. I know, it's been too long. I feel a little guilty about that. But I'm here now, so that's all that matters. All is well. All's right. And I don't have a lot of time. I mean, 2 hours, but like I feel like that's not a lot of time. So I'm going to actually start doing a little bit of inking and try to get this show on the road. And I very intentionally made the decision to shroud Godzilla in a bunch of shadow, but I think that will both save me some time and, on adding detail, as well as it should effectively make him look pretty cool and menacing if I pull it off. So those are my goals right now, is just create a menacing, cool Godzilla so that I can give my friend a funny drawing for his birthday. Wish me luck. What's always love the streams. Thank you. Let's see. Nathan is Geek Workshop. Okay, I'm bad at names, so it may take me a minute to sort of get that through my head to remember. I feel like that's not quite in focus. Maybe it'll look more like it's in focus once it gets darker. It's pretty light pencils, so I guess we shall see. I'm going to just sort of be jumping all over the face here to sort of help myself give it all some form, and eventually it should look more and more deep and polished, but we'll see. Godzilla is an interesting character because he's actually had quite a few different looks. There's been, even forgetting like the American version, well, versions, and forgetting like any sort of animated versions, there have been different eras that Japan has produced Godzilla movies in, and then they take a break, and his look tends to change quite a bit each time, mostly due to technology, I suppose. Let's see, he's got sort of a wide mouth, almost like a dog, I guess, in the version I'm doing here. So just sort of guesstimating the rough proportions and putting in some of his big distinctive features like his fangs and teeth. And that might be a little too far, but anyway. Hello, Aldi. Nice to see you on the stream again. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody being here. Didn't necessarily expect too many folks to drop by, so I'm very grateful. Anyway, this particular version I'm doing is, well, at least my goal is to make it look like what they called the Millennium version of Godzilla, which was essentially the third era of Godzilla movies that Toho Studios began producing, and they produced them right around the turn of the century, or the turn of the millennium, hence the casual phrase, the Millennium era. That said, even within the Millennium era, the movies were pretty unique in that they made like maybe, I don't know, 5 of them, and aside from 2 movies, they rebooted their continuity with each movie, so Godzilla's look changed with each movie in the Millennium series. But there are some, what would you call them, similarities between each one. He definitely had more of like a realistic lizard type of a face and meaner, smaller eyes. More animal-like, a little less emphasis on the sort of idea of a man in a suit, trying to make it a little more convincing as an animal. And then they took a break after a few of those, and we didn't see Godzilla in Japan again until Shin Godzilla the other year, which I liked very much personally. And I actually saw with my friend John that's in this illustration. You should draw Godzilla from 1998. How dare you, Nathan? How dare you? The thing is, like, there have been so many Godzilla movies, I can't really even say with absolute conviction that that was the worst Godzilla movie, and I love Godzilla, and that was a bad, bad Godzilla movie, but I don't know if it's the worst. It certainly got the character wrong. There's no question about that. It screwed up there. But there are some others that are really boring. There's a couple that were like really bad towards the end of the original Showa era with Baby Godzilla. Oof. Or at least one of those was really bad. Not sure yet whether I'm going to give this Godzilla iris or pupils. I may not. It might make him look meaner if I don't. I want this to be a mean-looking Godzilla. My favorite versions of Godzilla are probably when he's an actual scary threat. I think that that's usually when the metaphor works best, as compared to a lot of times in Godzilla movies he will face a more dangerous enemy and basically protect Earth. And that can definitely be a hell of a lot of fun. But I like mean Godzilla, scary Godzilla. But we don't have to talk about just Godzilla. What else is going on? It's summer, so obviously lots of comic book movies. And so far, so good there. I really enjoyed both Infinity War and Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 was a blast. Have there been other comic book movies that I'm already forgetting? I don't know. Just the blockbuster summer movie season. Thinking of like Godzilla and monsters and stuff, I gotta say that Jurassic World movie does not look really good to me. I feel like it looks extra dumb. But who knows? Maybe it's just not a great trailer. Maybe the movie is fun. The last one was okay. It was enjoyable. Not one that I feel like owning or revisiting regularly. Let's see. I haven't been reading too many new comics right now. I'll have to definitely sort of catch up on quite a bit at some point. But there's been a few that I've read. I've read one is Batman White Knight by an artist and writer that I really like, Sean Gordon Murphy. And the basic premise, without getting into the details of how it all works, is that Joker sort of becomes a good guy. He becomes sane, and Batman is going over the edge. He's becoming too driven, too harsh, too mean with his methods, and I really enjoy it. I was drawn to it mostly because even if I don't like the story, I know I'm going to love the artwork. I love Sean Gordon Murphy. Great artist. Really one of my favorites today. But I like the story too. It's been fun. Hey, Chrissy. Is the sound not working?
No, it's fine. Did you feed your cat?
No.
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's time to feed our cats. My fiance was asking if I had before I started the stream. Should have. Didn't realize how late it was. thought I was getting started on this earlier. The day really slipped away from me. I spent most of it editing the episode that'll be up tomorrow. I was pretty late with it. I'm usually not quite this down to the wire. There have been times where it's been even later, of course. But let's see what other inking tools I have. Let's see. Didn't realize there were some comments. Nathan says, I've always wanted to get into the old Godzilla films, although they're so expensive. Are they? Oh, maybe they're out of print and stuff? I hadn't thought of that. But they get replayed on a lot of different stations. So keep your eye out there. No Hurt Feline. I like that is a great name. I love it. Have you heard of Kaiju Big Battle? Yes. Yes, I have. I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, that they actually started in Boston. And I was living in Boston at the time that they were like getting up and running. But I've never seen one of their shows live. I would really love to. Kaiju Big Battle, if people haven't heard, is basically a professional wrestling promotion, but everybody dresses in gigantic monster or kaiju suits. So I love that idea. Get a lot of really acrobatic wrestlers that like will do moonsaults and moves off the top rope, things like that. Nathan asks, am I looking forward to the Cloak and Dagger series, and that he just saw an early screening? Well, tomorrow's episode is Cloak and Dagger. So I will be talking about the comics. I don't know that I'm excited for the show, but I'm curious. I don't think Cloak and Dagger have ever had a great story. I think they've got great looks. I think they've got lots of potential. I don't think that in the comics they've ever really had a great story. I won't talk about it too much since, as I say, I've got a new episode of Comic Tropes coming out in basically a few hours. But since I don't think it's perfect and there's room for improvement, the idea of setting it in New Orleans instead of like New York City, which everything is set in, is great. I lived in New Orleans for a number of years, and great city to film in. Like, has so much character and personality. Visually, I'm sure it'll give them a lot to work with that plenty of TV shows just don't have access to. You know, a lot of them film in Vancouver or LA or New York. You know, and then there's a few other like what do you call it? Cities that they film in, and Toronto is starting to become a bigger one. But New Orleans has just it's so weird. It's so old-fashioned in a way, and so there's a griminess to it, and I don't really mean that in a negative way. It's just that it's humid and hot down there, and things get dirty in a different way. You know, like different plant life and critters grow down there. So yeah, I would say that I'm at least curious about the Cloak and Dagger show visually. I'm curious what they might do to take advantage of that setting. I think it has story potential, and I think it has visual potential. So, you know, I haven't seen any of it yet. When I think it premieres, I want to say the 7th, so about a week, something like that. I'm a little curious. I'm not massively curious. Nathan says he did like the New Orleans aspect. I really miss New Orleans. You know, it's not a city where you can find every type of work. You know, it's great if you're, you know, what a chef or something like that. Oh, the food down there. That opened up my palate a lot living down there. I tried a lot of different spices and meats, you know, just things that I just hadn't had before when I lived down there. Like I got introduced to gator and even duck. That's fairly common, but down there, rabbit, all sorts of things. Sigamig says, anyone else currently watching FLCL? Did that debut like last night? Or is that tonight? Oh, it's probably right now on the East Coast in America, because let's see, it's midnight. Yeah, it debuts tonight. Very curious about that. FLCL, the original anyway. I haven't seen the new one. I loved the original FLCL. That was I was living in Boston when that came out, and my friend Nate Belgard introduced me to it. He's a comic book artist, really talented artist. Nate Belgard is. He introduced me to a lot of good anime. FLCL, Cowboy Bebop. I guess those were pretty much the big two. Kept me away from the garbage. Man, the original it isn't just good animation, it's experimental animation, and the story is about something. It's got a beginning, middle, end. It's only like, what was it? It's either 4 or 6 episodes. I think it was 6 episodes, and it's about a boy becoming an adult, a boy becoming a man, going through puberty, kind of specifically. But it's all told in like metaphor, and it's got humor and amazing action. The visuals were incredible. I was a big fan, still am a big fan of the original. What do you call it? FLCL. I think FLCL is super cool. So I hope that the new version is. I hope it tries something new, because I don't think it's even worth trying to repeat what was done before. I hope it's good. I hope at the very least, the absolute very least, that it has really good animation. The original had good animation, and I loved that band that did the music for FLCL, The Pillows. I remember hunting down their albums at like in Chinatown. Cool band. Great sound to that show. Great sound. All right, this Godzilla's starting to take a little bit of form, I would say. It's got some potential. I hope. I hope. I wish I was braver with laying down like really thick black shadow, because it can look fantastic when you know how to do it right. Mike Mignola is one of my favorite artists, and that guy is very bold with his shadows, and I love it. I hope someday I can sort of learn to do a bit more of that. What else is being asked? Fooly Cooley is really crazy. Kenji Blackstar, long time no see. Chris, have you ever been mad over a character being killed off? Oh, that's a really interesting question. Being mad over a character being killed off. I'm thinking. Was I ever mad about it? Well, actually, yeah. Now that I think of it, the Spider-Man clone saga really made me. It's not quite the same as being killed off, but they essentially told us, the reader, at the beginning that the Peter Parker we'd been reading for the last, I forget how long now, it was like 10 or 15 years. They told us that that was actually a clone, not the real Peter Parker. So not quite the same as like literally just immediately killing off that character, but telling us that the character who I had grown up reading was a clone really felt it. I didn't like it, and I struggled through most of the Clone Saga, but that was actually a point where I gave up reading Spider-Man for quite a while. I just wasn't enjoying it. I came back later, and I think that they ultimately basically like said, no, the Peter Parker was always the original, and it was just a confusing plot by the villain, the Jackal. But that's close to like a character being killed off that I was a little bit mad about. Trying to think if there's any others. I don't know if I was mad about it, but I really liked the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it really hurt to lose Buffy's mother in season 5, I want to say. But they did it really well, and it was good, but I also think that the show kind of left Buffy out on her own without any mentor or guide for a while. So that was a little frustrating. But I wasn't mad about that one per se. It just it kind of hurt, like I felt something over it. Trying to think about like other famous characters that have like been killed off that I cared about anyway. Not a lot coming to mind actually. In comics anyway, I'm sort of the opinion that like, well, they'll be back. At least at this point in my life. Maybe when I was younger, I didn't really know or believe that, but. Oh, okay. Which makes me think. I missed Professor X and Cyclops. Those were like, I like those guys to be heroes, and I like them to be leading the X-Men. So I think Professor X is back by now. I don't know if Cyclops is, but I was frustrated about that. Let's see. No Hurt Feline. I love that name. Do you think a Scud the Disposable Assassin film could be possible to pull off? Yeah, absolutely. Just make sure that it's Rob Schrab that writes and directs it, because he's a great, funny director, and he'd know how to do it right. I mean, he's the creator of the material. Like, yeah, I definitely think that could work. I love Scud the Disposable Assassin. That was definitely, well, it wasn't the first sort of indie comic that I got, because I was into stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and that, The Tick, but it was, because Scud was more early 90s than 80s, but yeah, I love Scud. I don't know if a movie would actually be the ideal format for an adaptation. I sort of think that a TV show might work better, though. I think there's a lot of stories you could tell with him. Sigamig says, I recently went to a con and they gave everyone FLCL bags as part of a promotion. That's pretty cool. And No Hurt Feline says that he or she, I can't quite tell from that name, saw the Pillows live at South by Southwest. I'm jealous. That's awesome. You saw the Pillows live? I was just talking, obviously, about how I really like that band. Like, they've got a great sound. I don't even know what they're always saying. Even when it's in English, I can't always quite make it out, but yeah, I like the Pillows, so that's really awesome. Congrats. Just so you know, the title and description are about Lego Voltron, not Godzilla. Oh, darn it. Let me see if I can make a quick adjustment on that. Let me see if I can update the title and description. Darn it. I don't know if it changed or not. I don't know if I'm able to change it while it's live, but I typed in that I'm drawing Godzilla. Thank you for that. It's been so long since I've live streamed, I just wasn't thinking. All right, I need a thicker brush for some of this, and what do I have as options? I don't know. I'm looking for like a marker or a brush, and I can't see one. Maybe this old brush. This is good. I'm going to just take a moment to throw down some really big shadows. But actually, it might give me time to catch up on the questions in the chat room, so that's good. Let's see. Okay, the Hanneman. How can you just accept that deaths aren't permanent? You should want better. Oh, I totally agree with you there. I don't just like accept it. Well, I'm not reading a lot of the superhero books anymore, so I just don't care right now, you know? If it's a book that I like, yeah, I'd care, but, you know, if you tell me that, like, I'm not reading Iron Man right now, and it's like Iron Man is dead, I don't care that much. He'll be back. I'll read the story later when I care about it. It doesn't upset me that they put in a new character, even if it doesn't appeal to me right now. I know that at some point, like, you know, they'll bring the original back. It's just what they do in superhero comics. You know, I like storylines these days and art in superhero books, but I don't have the same passion for the characters that I did when I was younger, and their stories were newer to me. It's not the same as like disliking the characters, but I just don't have the same passion anymore because I've sort of seen the same stories. They tend to cycle, and I'm fine with that because, you know, it never ends. Like, serialized stories about superheroes never end, so I'm totally fine with them trying new things to get a new reader, and sometimes that new thing is just, you know, temporarily killing off a character. Wow, somebody's car out there is loud. The title updated. Thank you, Nathan. No Hurt Feline says that she is a girl. My name is Lane. I followed you on Twitter, but just realized you created a Comic Tropes Twitter. Yeah, I created that pretty recently. I've been putting that off forever, Lane, because I just didn't feel that I had the time to devote to managing my social media properly. But then I said to myself, you know what? I'm never going to think the time is right. Let's just do it. Let's just pull the trigger and start working on some dedicated stuff, because people probably look for a Comic Tropes Twitter instead of looking for me. So I need to work on my hashtags and promote this stuff more. I just don't have much time to properly promote the channel, and that's my biggest frustration in having this YouTube channel where I'm constantly creating content. Is I'm relying on organic views. You know, I'm putting in the metadata and the title and hoping that people find it, but I'm not doing a whole lot on social media to properly promote it. But having a dedicated Twitter channel that I can, like, you know, plug an episode more than once without annoying people, it's a step in the right direction. Something I should have done a while back. Oh, wow, Nathan, previously known as Geek Workshop, just sent me a super chat welcoming me back to streaming. Thank you. That's so nice of you. Thank you very much. That's not expected out of anyone, but very, very welcome. That's super kind of you, Nathan. Thank you. And this is nice. It's nice to be back chatting with people and answering interesting questions about all sorts of pop culture. I know what to share with you guys. So what I'm about to tell you, it's probably a long shot that won't necessarily... Well, no, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't talk about it yet. I'll have something in a future episode to talk about. It's too soon. What else? What about fridging like they did in Deadpool 2? Good question, Julio. I would say that, like, in general, the concept of fridging is pretty lazy writing. If you introduce a character only to kill them off, in turn to give the main character, the protagonist, some motivation, it's a little lazy. But I don't know if I'd necessarily call killing the character that they killed in Deadpool 2 fridging, because that character was previously established. They didn't introduce this person and then kill them right off. So I wouldn't personally call that fridging. Also, I'm not sure, but they may have even undone it at the end of the movie. Like, we'll see, you know, if there's Deadpool 3, and there probably will be. I feel like that character could be back. It wasn't the most elegant storytelling that said. Like, killing the character off maybe could have been handled more carefully. Because it wasn't Deadpool's primary motivation for the whole story. It seemed more like they were setting an important character to the side for a while. I wouldn't quite call it fridging, but I also don't know that it was necessarily the best move. I think that there were other ways they could have potentially handled it. Hollow Nano is here. Oh yeah, this looks good. Well, thank you. That's nice. Hanneman says, shouldn't that new thing be making new books? Yes and no. It definitely is important to create new books, no question. But creating new superheroes, most of them just do not take off. They don't. So sometimes you'll need to give a character a rest, actually. And so instead of, just saying that they're canceling Captain America's title for a while, like, they have canceled the Fantastic Four title for a number of years. And they've done that with other books in the past, like Doctor Strange or Cloak and Dagger. Sometimes instead you just do cowl replacement. You put in a new character with those sort of same responsibilities and same name, and it's just so that, like, people will give that character a chance, and then that character may spin off into their own book. But they've been doing that forever. Like, I think that, back in the early 80s, the writers basically ran out of big stuff that they could do with Tony Stark. So they made a supporting character, Rhodey, Iron Man, for a long time. I remember reading those stories, as a kid, and it didn't annoy me. I wasn't like, oh, this should be a whole new book, and Tony Stark should also be around. Sometimes you just need to give those characters a rest. Like Doctor Who is a show that's been on forever. Every once in a while, there's a huge gap between their seasons. And I'm not just talking about from, like, 87 until 2005. I'm saying that, like, in between the modern seasons, sometimes you have almost a year off. It's because characters need a break. Like, there's just not a writer around that has an idea for them. That's just my opinion. Michael says, glad to see you still drawing. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for dropping in. I appreciate it. Nathan says, I'm pretty sure Ryan Reynolds says the end credit scene was canon. That'd be interesting. I wasn't sure. We'll only know for sure once Deadpool 3 gets made. I hope I'm not too long-winded in what I'm explaining, but, I'm just sitting here drawing, so, and I don't have somebody right next to me to, like, chime in, so sometimes when I talk, I'm going to be long-winded about my explanations. I hope it's not too annoying. Trying to figure out, like, where I want to, I'll sort of make this the end of his head. Figure out, like, where I'm gonna block out the lighting. Hold on, I just got a text. I just need to see what it is. Okay, I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm just responding to this text. My friend that I'm drawing this for just had something come up, so I'm not going to see him, which means I probably got a little more time to draw it. But that's okay. I'm having fun right now drawing and talking to all of you. So let's see. No Hurt Feline. Concerning Deadpool 2, did you like the troll scenes that they filmed for the trailers? Yeah, actually I did appreciate that. I get burnt out on how many movie trailers give everything away. And yeah, you don't have to watch them at home, but if you're in the theater, you don't have much choice unless you're going to just sort of hold your ears. I've seen the trailer for The Rock's new movie Skyscraper in a couple of recent movies, and it feels like they give away the entire story chronologically in that trailer. I mean, I could be wrong, and there could be some sort of twists and stuff, but I mean, it shows a lot. So when a trailer shows a few scenes that don't show up in the final version, I don't mind that actually. I don't feel like I've been cheated. I'm like, oh, okay, that's it's not really lying. It's just sort of you're not seeing all the best jokes. That can be really frustrating with comedy trailers. Comedies very frequently will like give away some of the best jokes, and then you see it in the theater, and you're like, yeah, I remember that one. Trailers are tricky. Jurassic Spider-Man fan joins and says, I'm a massive fan of your channel. That's very kind of you. You're actually one of my favorite comic book channels, and I really dig your art. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. Thanks for dropping in. Just talking all sorts of stuff about comics and pop culture tonight, huh? What else is going on? I really can't remember for sure if I've done a live stream since I got back from my trip in March. I think I did one, right? It's hard to say. But anyway, I had a great trip to Tokyo and Hong Kong. If you watch my channel, you've seen that I recorded a bunch of 2 episodes while I was abroad. Tried to make the most of it, as busy as I was. And yeah, that was awesome, man. Which makes me think, like, what has been your favorite place to travel to? Or at least what would be your favorite place to travel to if money and time was no object right now? What is the artist you steal more from? I don't know what that means, Julio. If you're talking about this, I drew this myself. I don't know. Do you mean like who am I inspired by? Anyway, Bren Ross Film Production says, what was the most disappointing movie experience you ever had? I can remember a few, but they were like further in the past. I went to see that movie Cool World. I don't expect many people to remember that. It was Gabriel Byrne and an early film with Brad Pitt, and it was like partially animated by Ralph Bakshi. And I like a lot of Ralph Bakshi's sort of independent stuff. It's not always great looking animation, but I always appreciated his sort of experimental nature. But man, that movie Cool World, just like, I didn't think the animation was good. I didn't think the story was good. It just looked bad. It was depressing and boring. That was a really disappointing one that I kept thinking of like leaving the theater, but I was there with a friend and we just like didn't, like when we came out, we were both like, yeah, that was pretty bad. I remember going to see, what was the Schwarzenegger one that I'm thinking of right now? Action Hero? Last Action Hero? Is that, am I remembering the title right? I was pretty disappointed with that one. And then I think I tend to sort of forget a bunch of the sort of blockbuster things that I don't like. I tend to just like forget them. So like I'm sure I've been disappointed by a bunch. Hey, I was disappointed by the American Godzilla in 1998, but it took me a minute to even think of that, and like I was just reminded because he's right in front of me. So I tend to forget those more than anything else. Did you have one that you were thinking of, Bryn Ross Film Productions? Did you have a movie that you were thinking of that was a big disappointment? All right. My friend that I'm drawing this for, we're going to see Upgrade tomorrow instead, and that's cool. That movie looks interesting. I don't know if it'll be great, but it looks interesting. Hopefully it's fun. Reminds me of both The Crow and RoboCop, which are two movies that I've enjoyed, especially RoboCop. RoboCop is fantastic. Like, people sometimes think that like that was maybe a B movie or something. It's like, no, it's fantastic. It's fantastic action. It's fantastic satire. Man, I think that's like that's an example of a fantastic script. It's so well structured. I love RoboCop. I think it's really, really solid, rock solid. All right, there's some more things. Julio is saying more inspired. What artist inspires me? Oh, well, that's totally fair. Let me think. Mike Mignola is an inspiration. I look at like the stuff these days by Sean Gordon Murphy, and I find that like very inspirational. I think he's an incredible artist. Will Eisner, early Frank Miller actually used to be an inspiration. I haven't really looked too much at his 80s work lately, but he's really he. What I liked about Frank Miller's early work was he was never like the sharpest, most detailed draftsman, but I liked how he could convey stuff with as few lines as possible. He was very efficient in his line art and his storytelling. So he was somebody that I really admired back in the day. I'm trying to think of like some other. I mean, there's so many artists that I love. Who else is fantastic? I mean, of what I consider sort of my contemporaries, my peers, my friends, Tony Moore and Corey Walker and Nate Bellegarde are all guys that I really, really admire. We were all sort of just like amateurs that were drawing online at the same time and became friends, and they all became pros, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, listing them because maybe you'd be familiar with their work. There's plenty of other friends that were drawing at the time that were equally talented that didn't necessarily go pro. But, yeah. Kenji, no. Oh, Jurassic Spider-Man fan says, have I read Amazing Spider-Man number 800? No, I'm a couple years behind, I think, on Spider-Man. I sort of catch up in fits and spurts with like trade paperbacks and digital comics and stuff. So I'm actually kind of behind on what's going on in Amazing Spider-Man for the most part. But personally, I enjoyed like the vast majority of Dan Slott's stuff. I liked when Doc Ock became the superior Spider-Man. I thought that was a really interesting storyline. So I'm one that liked it. I think it's some people hated it, some people loved it, and I'm more towards I loved it. So I will read it at some point, but no, I haven't read it yet. I'd like to, but no, I haven't. Let's see. Kenji says that the first video of mine that I saw, that he saw, was my Rob Liefeld one, and I ate a hot pepper for every trope. Yeah, that hurt. That legit hurt. I still have memories of of eating some of those peppers. Since I made that, like, I found out about the Carolina Reaper and the Scorpion. There's two peppers that are hotter than what I ate that were above ghost pepper. So sometimes I think about, like, maybe doing those in a video at some point, eating those, but I don't know. You may have noticed that I don't tend to always, or as often, I'm going to do this thing every time I see evidence of a trope. I sort of came to feel like that was slowing down the overall gist of the video. Like, I like to talk about people's techniques, their repeating motifs, their tropes. I like doing that, but I also want the videos to be efficient. I want you to be able to get the information and not, like, constantly be derailed. That's why I might do, like, I'll do jokes, but I don't usually do long skits, and I don't usually, like, read a comic and make a joke about every panel and every page, because I feel like that's not really a review. Like, I'll still go through a single book in an episode, and I'll, like, break it down. But it's so that I can talk to the audience about technique and history. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. So the videos have slightly changed over the years in terms of, I'm just trying to make them as efficient and enjoyable as possible. That's my goal. Going to take a look at a question in just a sec. I'm just sort of making sure I'm comfortable with where some of this detail's going. All right, let's see. Oh, it looks like I got a bunch of questions. No Hurt Feline answers my question about travel. I want to travel to Japan. I took Japanese in middle school and college. I originally studied it to go on a mission there when I was 18, yet I had fallen away from the Mormon church after high school. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I've been to Japan 3 times. I've been fortunate, and I love it. I would sincerely love to live there. But, I don't know what I would do for work. I really don't. It's not easy to move to any foreign country unless you already have a job offer. And most foreign countries, have a thing in place where they want to hire their own citizens first. So you have to be exceptional at a job in order to get, a skilled position. That's generally the rule of thumb. So I don't know what I would do that, would get me a job there. Or you can be rich and just live somewhere, obviously. That's easy. Why not just do that? Cut out the middleman, just become rich. Yeah, I would actually like to live there, having been there 3 times. I am not tired of it. There's still, I just like it there a lot. But there's also a lot of other places that I would really love to travel to throughout Europe especially, but also a bunch of South America. If I was rich, I would be traveling all the time and just drawing what I see, like making little sketch journals. You ever see the Craig Thompson comic book, Carnet de Voyage? It was basically just a travel journal that he kept while traveling through Europe, and he would draw what he sees and sometimes, like write in text what happened that day. So it's not necessarily a traditional comic book full of panels, but it reads very much like a comic book, and it's really beautiful. I loved it. Julio says Batman versus Superman, what a disappointment. I agree with that. That was a disappointing movie. I very much agree. This is going to be unpopular, although this is Nathan's. He says that he was very slightly disappointed by Infinity War. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that it was the best of the Marvel movies. But I think I had a good time at it. I saw it twice in the theater. I liked it. I don't think I'd put it in like my top 5 Marvel movies, but I liked it. But my only point is that I can't understand if someone was saying they were slightly disappointed. It was very hyped, so that's a lot to live up to. I get it. No Hurt Feline. Emperor Zombie is one of my favorite Mike Mignola characters. Definitely. Amazing Screw-On Head is a really good one too. I wish he did more funny stuff. He's a funny guy. He's a funny fellow, that Mike Mignola. He's got quite a sense of humor on him. He's gonna go places, I tell you. I think Suicide Squad was the most disappointing. This is Bryn Ross Film Productions. It could have been something special, but was so sloppy. Apparently, it was edited by people who edit movie trailers, and it really shows. Totally agree. Oh my God, that movie. Like, that movie, I wasn't really looking forward to for the longest time. And then they had that trailer, the last trailer they made it look fun, like a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. They had lots of shots of action and pop songs, and you know what? I fell for it. I feel like such a sucker. I fell for it. I was like, oh, maybe it'll be good. And like the first 20 minutes or so are just the most cliche songs you could imagine being used to introduce every single character. It was crazy. That was such a disappointment. And it was, like you say, sloppy. It was like that scene of Harley gets in an elevator and like waves to the team down below. And I think she gets in a fight along the way while the elevator's going up. But the elevator gets to the top, she gets out, and the whole team is there already. And you're like, something was cut there. It's like she waves bye to them as she goes up in the elevator, but then they're all up there when she finally finishes the fight and gets up there. It's like if you pay attention. Shot and re-edited and doesn't always make sense. You know what would have made sense? Like as simple as if Joker was the villain that the Suicide Squad was tasked with taking down, I think that movie would have instantly made more sense because they hire like guys like Slipknot who can climb anything and Captain Boomerang who throws boomerangs. Those are street level guys. If the government hired them to go after the Joker, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. If they hire those guys to go after like, you know, a Superman level threat, as they put it, it's like, what the hell would Captain Boomerang do against Superman? That's stupid. Very disappointing movie. Okay, Jurassic Spider-Man fan. Last question. I currently own Avengers Disassembled, Infinity Gauntlet, New Avengers, and Civil War. Are there any other big or small Marvel stories that you would recommend? Absolutely. The original Secret Wars and the more recent, like 3 years ago or something, Secret Wars. Those were great. What else was really fun? There were a bunch of good like crossovers back in the day. Trying to think of a good one. Mutant Massacre was pretty awesome. That was like an X-Men crossover that was really, really cool back in the day. What else is really good for Marvel? I feel like I should be thinking of more. Well, if it comes to me, I'll speak up. I'm Jurassic Spider-Man fan. I didn't love out of those like Avengers Disassembled and Civil War. I personally didn't really love. I didn't think either of those were that great. Nathan suggests Secret Wars from the 80s and the modern one, just like I just said. That's good. Do you ever ask Infotron to pose for life drawing reference? Asks Jeremy. I haven't used Infotron in a while, so thank you for thinking of him. You're gonna give him a swelled ego. He's gonna think people like him. Yeah, he poses for me all the time. He says, "Draw me like one of your French models, Chris," and then he drops his circuit board, and I say, "Put that back on, Infotron." No, no. That's great. Thank you for remembering Infotron. You know what happened with Infotron is I love 50s style robots. I just think they're kind of fun and kitschy, and so I had a lot of fun building Infotron. And then after I'd used him once or twice, someone told me that there's another comic book review show called Comic Book Girl 19. I think I'm getting that right. And I was like, oh, if another more popular YouTube show is using, like a 50s style robot, I don't want to be accused of like ripping anybody off. So that's why he really hasn't been around much. I still have that. It's a pretty big costume. But it's basically just sort of hanging out in my garage. I think I used him once more for a quick joke. It's like kind of recently, but it's not coming to me what that was. Oh, I just realized I didn't have that centered. Sorry. Anyway, so that's the reason why I don't really use him. I'd love to. Like, I love the idea of sort of having a weird sidekick every once in a while on my show. But I don't want people to accuse me of like ripping off somebody else's shtick. So as soon as somebody that's like more popular does something, you have to sort of avoid doing it. I actually make it a point not to watch other comic book review shows because I don't want to be influenced by either their opinions or even what comics they're choosing to review. Because there's only so many comics and there's going to be repetition, like especially with bad comics or great comics, one or the other. It's inevitable that like shows will cover the same material, but I don't want to see their takes on the material because I don't want to be accused of ripping off a joke or an opinion. So I actually don't really watch any other comic book review shows. I do watch my friend Godzilla Mendoza, and he does do opinions, but more on like, I don't know, games and movies and stuff like that comics are based on. So that's a little bit different. Anyway. Chrissy says, your microphone was shrieking for a minute but fixed itself. Really? I'm looking around. That's so weird. I can't imagine what triggered it. There's nothing near it. How bizarre. Well, as long as it fixed itself. Sorry about that, everybody. I have good equipment, not great equipment, and I'm not the most technically minded guy. I figure this stuff out, I figure it out so that I can do it, but I didn't know any of it before. I learn everything I can to try to make the show better. But I came in with very little knowledge on how to use the various, editing software, camera, lighting equipment, etc. So there's room for improvement, and hopefully over time I make some of those adjustments. I try, I promise. Avengers Infinity from 2013 was pretty good. Aldi gives that as a recommendation. I didn't read that one, I'm afraid. So yeah, but I appreciate other people giving recommendations for for other viewers. That's nice. What else? No Feline says, I love old sci-fi sets and 70s, 80s, and 90s retro future. Yeah, retro future is kind of, I guess, what I like now that you say that. Like I was saying, I like 50s robots, but I think I really like the retro futuristic ideas from things like, I don't know, Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, at least the comic strips. They had some pretty funky ideas of what the future would be. I kind of like it. It just seems so innocent and not always more efficient. I mean, most old ideas of the future just doesn't predict simple things like, you know, our the ubiquitousness of smartphones, how important the internet has become to our lives. Even when people like imagine computers with information everywhere, that like very little in terms of movies and TV guessed how prevalent that would all be. And it's kind of charming. Like their idea is like just a slightly better phone, and of course cars that can fly, and it's just like, it's just kind of funny how obvious some of those ideas seem. And every once in a while you get like movies that had that were thinking a little more forward than you give them credit for. I think that, like, you know, Terminator and even Back to the Future 2, even though it's silly, get quite a bit right in terms of just computers and stuff. So that's kind of interesting. Chrissy says that the mic here probably needs to be replaced soon. Okay. Jeremy says the episode with lots of Infotron clones was good. I had fun making that. What I didn't predict when I made that was I had to shoot, like, to put multiple ones together, I had to shoot it against a green screen. I hadn't thought ahead that Infotron is tremendously reflective. So, like, I really had to play a lot with the settings to try to tone it down. That said, you can see through bits of Infotron. There was just no way I could, like, really fix all that, but I was like, whatever, you know, I mean, it's for a joke. It's not like I'm trying to get a job in the sci-fi industry. I'll do the best I possibly can, but I don't think people are watching the show for special effects. Yeah. I think that there's a bunch of review shows that lose sight of why people are watching them. For instance, with movie review shows, I love a sense of humor. I love jokes and stuff. I like the Red Letter Media guys. Even if I don't agree with their opinion, I think that they have pretty good senses of humor. They review movies, and they usually have it framed with some pretty small skits. You know, like you don't have to catch them all, but I like that. And then there are shows that, like, it feels like the creator really just wants to do the skits. I've never been able to get into that show, Nostalgia Critic, because it really just feels like that guy wants to make, like, movies or funny skits, and it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't mesh very well. Or maybe he's just not as talented at making them. I don't want to be mean, but maybe that's all it is. But I think, you know, like, the point is, people watch for information and opinions. They don't really watch for something else. So even when I do some comedy, I really, and I don't say that I get this right all the time, but my goal is not to have the ratio out of whack, like too much comedy. I probably don't get it right that much, but it's that my goal is to just let the humor be based on what I'm reviewing, instead of just like, oh, what a crazy new character that just happened to drop by, and look at my latest impression. Just my thoughts. Maybe I'm too opinionated. Who knows? Who knows? Michael says, if you're a Spidey fan, Spider-Man Blue is fantastic. Was Spider-Man Blue by Jeff Leb and Tim Sale? Or was that something else? Let me know, Michael, because I don't think I've read Spider-Man Blue. Ben Ross Productions, what did you think of Wonder Woman? I personally didn't think it was good as many thought it was. I felt the twist ruined any interesting message there could have been. It kind of felt like a joke. I sort of agree with you that it's not necessarily as great as some people were giving it credit for, but I do think it's an overall enjoyable movie. I think it's the best thing that DC has done with their shared universe. Not that that's saying much. But it kind of gets by more on, like, the charm of its leads, and the fact that it's visually it does look good. There's some color and brightness, and then it can look serious when it needs to. There are good parts to it, but even that said, like, I'm not going to give it much more than, say, like, at most a B+. It's fine. It's not groundbreaking, but it was good. And honestly, at that point in time, that's what the DC movies needed, was just one that was at least good, like, because they certainly are far, far away from great. They just, yeah. I don't know if, like, their shared universe can really even be saved to be something amazing. Like, I don't know if it's worth it. If it was me, I'd say let's still go for a shared universe, but let's just start over. Because this ain't working. Take, like, if you can, like, at least 2 years off. I know that's forever in Hollywood terms to not make money, but let's take some time off. Because, yeah, it'd be pretty hard right now to fix, and, you're sort of locked into some pretty weird things, like, just the fact that Batman is kind of, for Batman, old. I don't think Ben Affleck is old, but I do think that, like, for Batman, it's kind of weird that he's been supposedly operating for as long as he has. It's just not a great take on the character. Superman is, like, I think that's the worst take on Superman I've ever seen. He's so unheroic in the first two movies. He's slightly better in Justice League, but I just don't think it's really even worth saving. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Oh, No Hurt Feline says, I love Red Letter Media. So, Chris, I have to ask, Mike, Jay, or Rich Evans? I like them all for very different reasons. I mean, I think that Jay's opinions, I was about to say they most closely line up with mine, but it's really just that, like, I have a love for horror and indie movies that Jay also has, so I appreciate that. Mike dominates the show. I mean, he's very funny, and he knows it, and he can sometimes shut the others down if he feels like it. But that's funny within the context of the shows. I think he probably makes me laugh the most, but Rich Evans, his voice and especially his laugh are so ridiculously charming to me. His laugh is just, oh, what a nightmare that laugh is. My laugh just then didn't sound too great either, so I don't know if I should be talking, but oh my god, that high-pitched squeal he does as a laugh is just hilarious. I don't know, if I have to just sort of pick my favorite, I guess I'll go with Mike, but I'm very glad that Red Letter Media has all those guys. They work very well off each other. They work very well. They hit some of the sort of what would you say, like in classic comedy groups, you sort of need certain personality types, and they kind of hit that, like almost like the Three Stooges. Nathan says, I used to be a big fan of Nostalgia Critic, although I've kind of stopped liking his show as much. A lot of his episodes feel hit or miss now. I haven't watched his stuff for years. I tried. Hello, Fanboys Rain. And he replies that, yes, I was right. Superman Blue was Leb and Sale. That's cool. I didn't read that one. Who gave that recommendation? Michael Wisman also says Spider-Man Blue is a retelling of the love triangle between Peter, Gwen, and MJ. Oh, well, that sounds kind of cool. And Michael says, have you seen the YouTube channel Quentin Reviews? Actually, I did come across a couple of his videos, like I think in just the last week. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. Like, I wonder if he's sort of hitting some sort of algorithm sweet spot for YouTube all of a sudden and getting like a push. Because I just discovered him and I thought like he did a pretty good show. Sometimes a show does not need too much in terms of production values if it's got an informed person talking that knows when to stop talking, like doesn't just babble with facts, blah, 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 like actually just has something to say. I haven't watched enough to say that if I love him, but the two videos that I saw, I was like, oh, pretty cool. So, I could see myself subscribing to that maybe. We'll see. Trying to think if I haven't really discovered any YouTubers in the last little while that I felt like subscribing to, and I like discovering YouTubers that I subscribe to. Like I like YouTube a lot, and I find lots of random videos that I'll watch. But I'm always looking for a good recommendation if people have that. I also like talking podcasts. I don't have a lot of time these days for podcasts, but whenever I get my next job, like I know I'll have some sort of a commute, and then I'll probably start listening to more podcasts. My favorite podcast these days is Harmontown. I'm a huge fan of Dan Harmon. Like, not just what he's created, but like him. Not that he's a perfect person at all, but I really admire his approach to writing. So I find Harmontown very funny and very interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot from Dan Harmon over the years. I've been following him since, I guess since he wrote backup stories in Scud. So I discovered Dan Harmon through comics. And then I remember finding like a bootleg of his show that pilot that he and Rob made. What was it? Heat Vision and Jack. Oh man, that was such a discovery. And then, of course, Channel 101, and now, of course, everybody knows him because of Rick and Morty and Community and stuff. But I've been a fan of Dan Harmon for a long time, so that's a podcast I personally get a lot out of. I like learning about his way of thinking. He thinks in metaphors, and I wish I could think in metaphors that quickly, because I think that's a really great way to be able to write, is if you can think metaphorically. I think it's a huge boost. I missed a few things. Favorite DC film, says Brenross Film Productions. I mean, if we're talking any DC character, then I think I'd have to say Dark Knight. Yeah, Dark Knight. With Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan. That's probably overall my favorite film based on DC superheroes. And as a kid, like the original Superman, Superman 2, the original Batman in '89, and even like the Batman 1966 TV show and their movie. That stuff I can still enjoy a lot. if you're talking out of like the modern connected universe that they have, there's not much to choose from there, so I guess I'll go with Wonder Woman. Nathan says he's been watching Quentin reviews for months. No Hurt Feline knew who that was. So let's see. Thank you for answering my questions, Chris. Keep up the great work, and I hope you have a great day. That's from Jurassic Spider-Man fan. Of course, I'm happy to talk to you guys. Let's see. Nathan Cudgel says Carl Smallwood's Fact Fiend is really hilarious. So I've been watching a lot of that lately. I think I came across one of those this past week. I think I watched them talking about Chris Chan, who apparently has been, a public figure on the internet for a very long time, kind of an internet weirdo that people like to laugh at, and I had not heard of him until very recently, like within a month. And I'm finding so many discussions and sort of documentaries and stuff that people have done on YouTube about this guy's life. Wow. It's so big that I'm like, how have I never heard about this before? But I just hadn't. So Chris Chan is sort of like a huge thing that I've started to go down a rabbit hole. Like I'm just like, I feel bad actually for well, now I guess she goes by Christine Chandler, so I'll be respectful and observe that. So I feel bad for her because some of these trolls have done some really cruel things to somebody that's clearly on the spectrum, like clearly is pretty autistic. That said, back when she was Chris, pretty annoying person. I get why people would poke fun. I think some of it is funny, but some of the tricking him into thinking he had a girlfriend and he doesn't, like that some of that, like I feel bad for the person. But anyway, that's all new to me. I somehow I've never heard about the stories of Chris Chan like that. This is brand new to me. If you guys haven't heard, also, like, wow, there's just so much material on that person. Ironically, he became famous because he makes comics. Well, I say he because it was as Chris Chan. And the comics are pretty bad because they're self-insert. Like he inserts himself into the story, and he's like amazing and perfect in it. So yeah, pretty crazy stuff. Whew. There's a lot to learn about that person. Comic tropes. Scud the Disposable Assassin, please. That's definitely a good suggestion, Michael. I don't know why I honestly hadn't thought of discussing Scud before, but maybe I will. And I've actually interviewed Rob Schraub before. I used to have a podcast for many years, and I would interview people, and I interviewed Rob Schraub, and we got along. We are Facebook friends. I wonder if I could interview him for this. He's probably too busy. Wouldn't hurt to ask. I wouldn't get my hopes up that I can actually get that interview, but that would be interesting to talk to him about Scud. I feel like when I already am approaching, if I'm reviewing a comic, I want to be honest with my opinions if I don't like something. But when I already like a comic creator or a comic book, I don't feel bad about potentially doing an interview with them because I don't feel like the lines are crossing there because I've already made my mind up that I like something, and now I want to talk to them and understand their approach to something to try to learn maybe like just how they made something that I admire so much. So if that makes sense. It's hard, like making this show because I don't want to just crap all over people for the hell of it. Like I will like talk if like for instance, I think Civilian Justice is one of the worst comics I've ever read. But I don't want to like hurt the person's feelings that made it, because I doubt anybody sets out to make a bad product, you know? Maybe they're trying to make it for reasons that are less than artistic. Maybe they're trying to just make money, but I don't think that anybody sets out to make a bad product. So it can be hard, you know. I don't want to like, I don't want to just be mean for the sake of being mean. Like it's easy to make jokes just poking fun at something. It's very easy. Like I could make a lot more jokes about some of the stuff I review that are like, but it just doesn't necessarily feel like, even if you get like one or two good jokes, there's also like, you can lose the audience if you go too mean. Even if they're good jokes, sometimes you can lose the audience that way. And I'm not against insult comedy or anything like that. I'm not. It's just that like sometimes there could be the perception that you're punching down at a certain point. Like you've got the microphone, you've got the platform, and the person can't respond in my video. So if I'm just crapping on them, I think that stops being funny at a certain point. It's tricky. It really is. It's tricky. I don't want to like, I want to be honest. I want to be humorous. It's a tough balance sometimes. Blah, blah, blah. No Hurt Feline asks if I like the Venture Brothers. I love the Venture Brothers. I really do. I think that the Venture Brothers is clever and funny, and I'm very patient waiting for more Venture Brothers. I was glad to hear the recent news that it's coming back sooner than this November. Yeah, I definitely like Venture Brothers a lot. I think Jackson and Doc are really funny, clever guys. That's my opinion. Thanks, Michael Wisman, by the way, for suggesting Scud. That's a really good idea for a review. Jeremy Pinkham says, I just listened to a podcast interview with Craig Thompson about Carnet de Voyage, actually. Jeremy, what was the podcast called? I would like to read it. That would be very interesting. Sigamig says, Chris Chan, I was obsessed with his story for a bit in high school. It's hard to look away, right? It's like a train wreck that's hard to look away from. Nathan asks, what TV shows have you waited to get good but never did? Mine is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is great, but I do think it actually got pretty good in seasons 4 and 5. I kept watching that one, and I thought that like seasons 4 and 5 were pretty good TV. Not great, but pretty good. Watchable, plenty watchable, plenty interesting. My opinion. But I understand, like, it's not excellent. Okay, let's see. What's a show that I watched waiting for it to get good? I don't have a lot of patience, honestly, with a show that I don't think is good. I give up on shows pretty fast. I'm pretty critical of the TV I watch. I like TV a lot, so what did I try that I gave up on fast? It's a really interesting question, by the way. I give up on Family Guy really fast. That type of humor that just is primarily just sort of mentioning a reference, I didn't find that very funny. That show doesn't work for me. That's what else have I given up on quickly? Sometimes you hear about a show that's like got some critical acclaim, but it just doesn't quite work for you. And The Shield with Michael Chiklis, that one didn't really work for me. So I probably missed out on what made that one great. Justified, I also stopped watching in the first season, although I heard so many good things about it that I'll probably someday revisit that one. I probably could be wrong on that one. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Shows that you sort of gave up on because they never got good. Yeah. Michael Wisman suggests I review or talk about Doug Tennaple. I don't know whether it's pronounced Ten Nepal or Ten Naples. I don't really know. I've never known. But interesting story with that guy. I was introduced, a friend of mine that writes for comics, Benito Sereno, recommended to me the Doug Tenable book Creature Tech. And I really liked Creature Tech when I read it. Like that was a really interesting, cool book. So I was into him. And my friend Nate Belgard, who I mentioned earlier tonight, fantastic artist, so good. He had done some fan art of, I think, Creature Tech, or maybe it was a bunch of Doug's comics. I can't quite remember now, because this was a pretty long time ago. This was like at least 10 years ago. But he had drawn a really cool piece of art. And he had it hosted on DeviantArt. This was back when DeviantArt was brand new, so maybe we can figure out the timing from figuring that out. I don't remember off the top of my head. My friend Maddie liked the drawing so much that he sent it, sent a link to Doug Tenable, said, like, I think you should see my friend Nate's drawing of your characters. And Doug sent this bizarre letter back saying, like, I don't believe in, supporting deviancy, because it was hosted on DeviantArt. He's like, this whole generation of yours is like obsessed with like finding deviancy and loving things that are awful and terrible and stuff, and like screw you. Like it was a really mean letter, and like I basically came to learn that like Doug is super religious, so he just sort of flipped out on Maddie and my friend Nate's art just because of where it was hosted. Strange. I still like Creature Tech a lot. I don't remember off the top of my head his other books. I know I read like 3 or 4 of them. Interesting creator, and I will consider doing an episode on his work at some point. Weird story, right? Cookie Madison joins. Just tuned in and caught the end of what you're saying, and I agree. Your positivity is why I like your channel. Thanks, Cookie. I do worry sometimes, like if I go too easy on stuff, then that's not espousing an opinion. So I just want to be fair. That's what I try to do. But I want to be funny and I want to be honest. Like if I don't like something, I will talk about it. I just don't want to be overly negative. I don't find that funny per se. But maybe I'm just being a SJW or something, right? This is fun. It's fun to draw all of like Godzilla's weird sort of wrinkles and just sort of make it up. He's got such a weird craggy body that you like kind of can't go wrong. You just, it's fun. I'm having a good time tonight. What time is it? 10:30. Okay, I've still got a little time. I'm going out to see a very late showing, like a midnight screening of RoboCop tonight, so I don't want to lose track of time. Sigamig says, I probably missed you talking about it, but what did you think of Infinity War? Yeah, I did talk about that briefly earlier. Yeah, I liked it. I was saying that I probably wouldn't put it in my top 5 Marvel movies, but I liked it. I thought I had a good time. I liked it enough that I saw it twice in the theater. So, yeah, I liked it. I need to get a circle template for this. And, of course, this one isn't big enough. Okay, I'll figure that out later. Should probably do some work on Godzilla's fins, his strange dorsal type fins. And I just fill in some of this black and probably move on to that next for a while. Nathan says, have you ever thought of doing a comic tropes type thing except with movie or TV shows? I've thought about it. I love TV and I love movies, so I would love to review some of that stuff. I slightly experimented with it. If you ever saw my Christmas episode where I reviewed the Rambo holiday episode, it was TV. Because I originally was planning on reviewing his comic, and then at the last minute I was like, you know what, like, this comic isn't great, but it also isn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. I thought that, like, I was getting a really bad Rambo comic, and then, like, really close to, like, when I was going to finish, or when I had to make the episode, I was like, this isn't abysmal, you know, like there's not that much to learn from this. So I was like, okay, change of plans. I'm going to review the Rambo cartoons Christmas episode. So I did it once, you could sort of say. It's a sort of crowded marketplace, like reviewing movies and TV shows and video games. And comics kind of is too, but I didn't know that at the time. So the main reason I haven't reviewed like movies and TV and stuff like that yet is because so many people are doing it well already. It's not necessarily productive to just sort of add to the noise, right? It's only worth doing if you can do a really good job and offer something a little different than what other people are doing. And I don't know if I have a take on that yet for reviewing movies or TV that's unique enough. I'd love to talk about especially bad movies. Like, that would be fun for me. But there are a lot of podcasts and YouTube shows about that already. And I just don't want to be part of the noise and just... if I had more time, like if YouTube for some reason took off, like if I was able to make money off of YouTube, maybe I'd give that a lot more thought because I could devote more time and energy to a good presentation and trying to come up with, you know, original topics and a good point of view. Right now, it's not likely that I'll review movies or TV. Just because I don't have a way to do it differently than anybody else without a lot of effort. It would take a lot of effort to sort of, you know, come up with what my version of that review would be. It's an interesting question. It would be fun. It would definitely be fun. But I might be just sort of shouting into the void if I did it right now. But it would be fun. Jonan Vasquez, Michael Wisman suggests. Yeah, maybe. It's an interesting idea. No Hurt Feline says, I like Doug's Sock Baby and his art in Earthworm, Jim, and Neverhood. Totally agree. Talented artist, and Sock Baby is good. Like, that's some good, low-budget, effective action, like good choreography and stuff. I remember really liking that back in the day. So I agree. You know, talented guy. I definitely would have a few things to say about his work. So it's a good suggestion. I don't know when I'd get to that, but it's a good suggestion. Of all the suggestions right now, like Scud is the one that just felt like a light bulb going off over my head. Like, oh, that's a book I'd love to talk about that I don't think there's probably a ton of content out there on YouTube reviewing it, so probably would be a little unique. I certainly have strong opinions about what works in it and why I like it. So I think that would be an interesting episode. Like, that one really, you know, excites me. You know, I've got like a calendar that's booked pretty far ahead, but that's one that I'll definitely be like looking to add as soon as possible. Like, I really like the idea of talking about that. Oh, Jeremy Pinkham answers my question. The Craig Thompson Carnet de Voyage radio podcast interview was on a show called Words and Pictures about comics on our local KBOO radio station. They have podcasts on iTunes. Words and Pictures. Thank you. I am a big fan of Craig Thompson's work. I've met him several times at conventions. Nice guy. Big fan of blankets. Big fan of Goodbye Chunky Rice. I loved Carnet de Voyage, and I'd love to hear his thoughts on his own work there. So thank you very much, Jeremy. Like, I will definitely make a note of that. Words and Pictures. Winged Clover says, I'm back once again. Good drawing. What is it? This is Godzilla. Specifically, my friend's birthday is today. He likes Godzilla. He loves all monster movies. So I'm drawing a silly little cartoon of him, like he'll be saying, like, yes, you know, like, embrace me to your bosom, giant kaiju. Something silly like that I'll add. Because I think he'll like it. Oh, by the way, I was out of Bristol, so on the back here, you can see I was doing some sketches of a character from My Hero Academia. I was drawing like these sketches of like, okay, what if she like jumped up and had these two attackers and like, you know, did a kick into a punch. That was me like just sketching, but I couldn't find any other paper, so that sketch is now going to be hidden forever because this is the final drawing that I'm doing for my friend, and that's just that's just what happened. Kenji Blackstar says, would you consider doing how to draw videos? I don't know if I'm a good enough artist to teach people how to draw. I'll do live streams still because I enjoy drawing. I enjoy talking to all of you. I don't know if I've got let me say this. I'd probably be more likely to do a how to write comics than how to draw comics, because I've actually taught that class before. There were a few years where I actually taught a writing class at a place called the Writers Center in Maryland, Bethesda, Maryland. And I liked doing that. And some of my students went on to have published work. I'm very proud of them. And some didn't, but like I think that like, you know, people came in with different goals and stuff. So I would I don't know if I'd do a how to draw thing. I think that might be pretentious because I don't feel like I'm at a professional level, you know? Like, this isn't something that Valiant or Dark Horse or Marvel, etc. would publish, I don't think. But I do feel more confident in my writing abilities. I've written all sorts of stuff, you know, even if I don't have a lot of published comics work. I feel like I know the basics of writing, and I would consider doing something like that at some point, and like talk about how you approach an art, like find an artist, and you know, like how you work and collaborate. Like I would consider something like that someday, maybe. Would I do a comic tropes on Greg Land? Absolutely. At some point, I absolutely will. He's on my. He doesn't have a slot yet, but he's on my calendar. Like I have some top topics and artists and writers that I always want to get to when I can slot them in, and Greg Land has been on that list for a long time. Like he's definitely somebody I want to talk about. So yes, at some point I will definitely be doing that. Can't say exactly when yet. Haven't figured that out. But I have some opinions. Not all of them mean. Why would you think that? That's so rude of you. Yeah, interesting artist. What else? Have you ever heard of the Breaking Bad comic book? It's on AMC's website, and it tells the story of Breaking Bad up to that point. It came out during season 5. I've never heard of that. A Breaking Bad comic book. It was basically just a recap? Is that like the idea? Huh. Well, I guess it... If it's just a recap, I guess that's fine. I'd be curious who drew it. Yeah, I'll look that up. I've not heard of that. As... I don't know what to say to that. It just didn't need an adaptation because the whole story was like, told as a TV show. So I was just sort of surprised to hear that. You could certainly tell a story like it in comics. In fact, you know what's a recommendation that's sort of like crime on that sort of street level to a degree anyway? Scalped. Scalped is an interesting book. Who wrote that? That was, I think, Jason Aaron. I think Jason Aaron wrote that. It was a Vertigo book, maybe 60 issues, something like that. Interesting book. It all takes place on a fictional Native American reservation and deals with an undercover FBI agent trying to root out the various crime that's going on the reservation. I like that book. I think that's a pretty good... That gets a recommend. Frankie Smile Show says, nice inks. Looks really good. Thank you. I think I have the kindest viewers. You guys just like always say nice things. You don't have to, but thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm having fun tonight. This is I like Godzilla. I like monsters. I like Godzilla, and I feel like a character like Godzilla, as long as you sort of get like the overall shape and the face pretty much right, you can just sort of go nuts on these details and spend forever on them, and it's kind of fun. It's time consuming, I guess, but as long as you're like sort of talking to someone, listening to a podcast, something like that, like it's a pretty good way to pass the time. The way I'm drawing the crags on his body is a little bit similar to how I'd approach drawing waves in the water. I just sort of want like layers of waves of craggy, strange shapes. I'm probably going to have to stop pretty soon so that I can make the movie that I'm going to tonight, guys. It's too bad because I'm actually having a great time just drawing and talking. But yeah, so I'll when I finish it, I'll post a photo on to the Comic Tropes Twitter and Facebook page, in case anybody's curious. You know what? I may also even because I've got a little more to do that I probably won't live stream. I'm close, but there's some more to do. I'll potentially use that as the thumbnail. I think I fell into a little bit of a hole doing all of his sort of shadows on his skin, but drawing these weird craggy dorsal fins is pretty cool too. Weird mix of sort of curves and sharp angles. Strange character. Let's see. Monsters are the best. Cookie Madison says, what about the idea you had a couple of live streams back, your experiences being a real costumed vigilante? Still think it's a great idea. I would consider doing that as a comic book at some point. My superhero year. Weird time in my life. Just encountered a lot of weird people, a lot of wonderful people. And felt like I did some good, but like also just felt like I was getting into a weirder and weirder place, and I just wasn't comfortable with it. But yeah, spent a year of my life dressing up as a superhero with other people and going out and trying to fight crime and help drunk people. was a weird idea, I guess. But if you've ever been curious why I had Phoenix Jones on the show one time, it's because of that. Like we dressed up as superheroes. I don't think even Phoenix is doing it anymore, to be honest. Like he's so busy with other things that I don't think he does that anymore. He may quietly be doing it. I don't think so. Let's see, what theater do you go to? Well, tonight for this movie in particular, it's a midnight showing of RoboCop at sort of a local art house type of movie theater. They show like a cool cult movie on Saturday nights at midnight. It's called The Grand, and it's a theater, not huge, but nice, in Tacoma, Washington, and I like it a lot. I tend to go a lot of Saturdays to this place. Catch new movies too. Like it just tends to always be cult. But you could end up with something like The Room. You could see a John Carpenter movie like They Live or Halloween. But it'll show new horror movies too. Yeah, I'm sorry, nothing's coming to my mind right off the top of my head. But I've seen some really cool movies there. Riley Desert Grizzly, that's a fun name, says, I binged all your shows over the last few weeks. Very enjoyable and relaxed. I hope you keep it up. I have no plans to stop. Thank you so much for watching, Riley. I really appreciate that. That sounds like quite a marathon. I release my new episodes on Sunday, so there will be one in a few hours. Too bad it's not the 1998 Godzilla. Aldi, you're crazy. I don't have a lot of interest in drawing that take on the character. But if you're a Godzilla fan, maybe you've seen the movie Final Wars. It was the last of the Millennium era, and in that movie, Godzilla fights like 20 different kaiju, most of them from like previous movies, and he even fights the American Godzilla. He beats it up within like less than a minute. It's pretty funny. Oh, Fanboy's Ring, you must be somewhat local if you know the Grand Cinema. Cookie Madison says, likes the title My Superhero Year. Obviously, if you've watched my episode from this past week, Harvey Pekar, it's definitely inspired by our cancer year. But it would be about my life, so it would be called My Superhero Year. I'm just glad I didn't get shot. In retrospect, there's been a few things that I've done that I look back at and I'm like, oh, well, that was kind of risky. Like, like when I was like 18 years old, I got really into rock climbing with a friend of mine. We just did lots and lots of rock climbing. And, sometimes you're up there like, 60 or 80 feet, and we were working without ropes or anything, just free climbing. And in retrospect, I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, like what was I thinking? Like one wrong foothold or handhold, you fall 60, 80 feet onto rocks, that's it. Like I'm just grateful, like in retrospect, that nothing happened. Yeah. And it's sort of like that with having dressed up as a superhero. I'm just glad that, because we got into some fist fights and stuff like that here and there. People would pull knives, but I never got injured. Do you have any tips on starting a story? I would say focus on structure and focus on yes, okay. If you're going to tell a story, I would say think about what does the protagonist want? Because that's what's going to drive the action. That's what's going to involve an inciting incident. What does the protagonist want. And then they cross a threshold that takes them on a journey, and when they end up back at the beginning, they're changed somehow. They've learned something or been changed physically, something like that. So just think about structure and think, what does the protagonist want? Before you think about world building, before you start thinking of necessarily cool action scenes, those just all go in your idea file. You write them down on a little notepad or your phone, whatever. But think, what does the protagonist want? Nathan says he's got a similar theater in his area called the Alamo Drafthouse. Yeah, it's very similar to that. Fanboys Rain works at a nearby Regal. Regal's good. I go to Regal plenty. Bren Ross Film Productions. By the way, I'm about to wrap up, so I'm just going to read these last few questions, but I'm zooming out too, so that you can see this a little bit more. So this is going to be like a likeness of my friend, and I'm going to have a silly little line here because this is a gift for a friend. But there he's going to be standing on a building rooftop. This won't take too long. I just need to get a circle template so that I can block this out properly. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of work on these dorsal fins. Probably not a lot of shading there. This stuff is not supposed to be as shaded, so it'll just be more hinted at. I'm very close to being done, but I got to leave. But I wanted you guys to sort of see what's been done. You can see most of it there. That's pretty good. All right, so let me read these last few questions before I say goodbye. Okay, Bren Ross Films says, what do you think of the upcoming Halloween film that John Carpenter is involved in? I like Halloween as a series for the most part. I don't care for the Rob Zombie ones. But then again, there have been plenty of bad. Halloween 5 and 6 and 9 are all pretty terrible too. So there's lots of bad Halloween movies. It's got potential. The fact that John Carpenter is involved is a good sign. I definitely think that I'm trying to remember their names, like the director and actor. It's just not coming to me. I'm getting tired. I'll have some Mountain Dew. That'll make me think faster. I have faith in them usually, but it's also a little bit weird to sort of be coming back to the same material again. It's like, they did Halloween 1 and 2, 3 was a different thing, and then they were like, okay, Jamie Lee Curtis has moved on, so we'll go in a different direction for 4, 5, 6. Like other family members and stuff like that. And they were whatever they were. But then a few years pass and they're like, oh, let's ignore 4, 5, and 6 and bring back Jamie Lee Curtis. Okay, cool. They get one pretty good movie, H2O, out of it, and then they do Resurrection, which was terrible. Okay, take a break. Reboot it with the Rob Zombie movies. Now we're gonna go back again with Jamie Lee Curtis. It's but again, ignore everything after the first or second movie. It's just weird. It's weird. It's hard to keep up when they keep sort of rebooting like that. I hope it's good. I hope it's effective by itself. I feel like it might be too beholden to what's gone before. Kid Dankula says baby girl. Don't know what that means. Riley Desert Grizzly says, excellent. Been working on art, so it's been playing through episode to episode. Okay, Riley's been working on art. Very cool. Excited for the Godzilla King Kong film they are working on? Potentially. I didn't think that the new at this point, American Godzilla movie was that great. I felt like it needed more Godzilla. I thought Godzilla looked cool. They set up a fine world for it. The movie itself wasn't great, but fine. Godzilla was decent. Godzilla himself was decent. It was good with any scenes with what's his name, Walter White. I can't remember any actors' names tonight. The scenes with him were good. I liked the King Kong movie a lot. It wasn't deep. It didn't really tell us anything, but it was fun and it looked good. I liked that recent King Kong Skull Island movie a lot. So hopefully a Godzilla King Kong movie is at least that much fun. I hope so. Aldi says, I think I've watched more videos of James Rolfe talking about Godzilla Then I watched actual Godzilla movies. His reviews on the Godzilla movies are a lot of fun. They're really, really good. Godzilla, there's a lot of good Godzilla movies that are worth watching. Louis B kindly says, drawing looks good, gives me a fist bump and a 100. Brian Cranston, thank you. I'm just tired. I'm just not thinking of. I'm bad at names. I forget names. Love the channel as well. Thank you. That's very kind of you. All right, folks. You've been wonderful tonight. This has been a really good conversation. I wish I could have finished the drawing. Needs a little bit more time, but I really got to get going. I've cut this about as close as I possibly can. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I will be back with a live stream soon. Tomorrow there will be a new episode of Comic Tropes about Cloak and Dagger and a few other things, actually. About a few other things. I hope you enjoy it. So I'll see you soon. Bye.